So it's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast today, and thank you for your time and sharing your expertise. It's very valuable to me, but also for everyone that's gonna listen. So I would just like to start out with, what are you working on at the moment?
Well, I seem to have three hats right now. So I'm a consultant, I mentor, and I also educate. And I have an interesting project going on right now with a startup, technology startup. So it's very different than my usual projects because I usually work with like really big, large brands on innovation, brand building. But the startup audience and startup environment is very different, and I find it very stimulating and exciting. Yeah, that's what I'm currently primarily working on, and also, some mentoring individuals and um, preparing courses, etc.
Okay, so for how long have you been working as a consultant, mentor, teaching?
Started up I founded my company in 2012, 12 years already got. So it's been more than a decade and it evolved like it does. I started out primarily as a consultant, focusing on long-term projects because I was primarily doing innovation, meaning it was about having an idea, finding an idea, and then creating a brand, a product along with that idea. But then I started evolving um, how I approach my business. I wanted to do more instead of one project over a course of 7 months that I only concentrated on. So now I like to have several clients at the same time, and I also, have educational projects in between and mentorships. Yes, over the course of 12 years, kind of evolved into where I am at now. And it's still evolving. I love what's happening with the technology and what it offers to us. So I love this notion of solopreneur and being able to do so much on your own when you have just a piece of computer. So let's see where life leads me, I guess.
Yeah, that's very interesting, everything that's going on now, and it's really hard to keep up, but it's really exciting too at the same time. So, yeah, I would like to go all the way back to when you started, and like, was it a specific thing you wanted to do? How did you end up in this marketing, branding, innovation area of business?
I studied business and then I did my master's degree. And funny enough, at the time, I had not a clear idea of what I wanted to do. But marketing always interested me. I shouldn't say always, but when I got first introduced to marketing during my business studies, I kind of liked it. Because there is this side of me which loves creativity, which loves artistry. And marketing is a lot of things. And there is an element of marketing which is very much about creativity, artistic thinking, even. I love that part. So I was kind of drawn to it. Um, Even my thesis, when I was finishing up my master's degree, was on consumer view of advertising. So it seems like I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted, which wasn't the case at all. I was just trying to find my way. And then someone mentioned to me of Unilever that they have like, this brand management system and it's really fun and exciting. And I got excited about that idea. And soon after that, Unilever decided to come to the university for, recruitment, basically, recruitment purposes. I applied and I got in. So that's how my marketing journey began, really. It's funny though, I wanted to be a brand manager, but um, they convinced me, someone at Unilever during this recruitment process convinced me I should start with market research first. Obviously, they needed to have someone in the market research department. They weren't necessarily thinking of my career, but they needed someone in the market research department. So they convinced me that it would be a great start if I wanted to then move on to marketing. It would be really beneficial for me. I agreed. So I started as research manager in the market research department. At the time, Unilever had its own market research department, and they were right. As I figured it out later, they were right because it gave me a perspective about an introduction to marketing, so to say. I still benefit from those 2 years as a research manager, and then I moved on to marketing, and then my career started from then on.
So how do you think starting out in the marketing branding industry has changed from then to now? Like, what advice would you give someone who started out today, for example?
I think obviously technology, obviously digital marketing has changed a lot. I'm sometimes thinking, if we had the tools back then, oh my God, life would have been so much different. And things are now much more precise. You can be much more deliberate with your marketing campaigns, with your marketing strategy, and everything. So it's a completely different world. But I have to tell you, some things don't change. If I think of marketing, if you ask me, tell me what marketing is in one word, right? I would answer strategy. I would say strategy equals marketing, marketing equals strategy. And I don't think that has changed at all at the fundamental level. So on the one hand, due to technology, due to, uh, sustainability issues, things are more complicated, but there are more opportunities. But on the other hand, we still need to understand how fundamentally marketing works from a strategic perspective. And I think that is still valid as it was yesteryear today. So that
Hmm.
that I don't think hasn't changed, and I'm not sure people recognize it really from that perspective. I'm not sure that everyone sees it that way and understands that strategic foundation is basically everything, you know.
Hmm.
And I don't quite like this divide between traditional marketing and digital marketing because at the end of the day, marketing is marketing. You just happen to have richer tools right now, and one of which is called digital marketing. But at the end of the day, if marketing is, making sure your brand meets with the right target audience in the right place with the right price, it
Hmm.
still is marketing as we know it.
Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, the on the strategic level, things are still the same, but the tools and the technology and maybe the execution of the strategy have changed. Is that right?
I believe so very much. Of course, when I say strategy, it's a nebulous word, and people not always love that word because it's complicated. And what does strategy mean at the end of the day? But strategy is thinking of or knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? If
Hmm.
you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then there is only so much you can accomplish. You have to have a deliberation, a focus, a purpose about what you want to achieve. And strategy guides you through that, really. And
Hmm.
whether we're doing super sophisticated digital marketing with super sophisticated social media tools today, we still need to know why we're doing what we're doing if we want to achieve the things we're set out to achieve.
Hmm.
So, to understand that, I think the traditional marketing teaching, the classic marketing teaching is still very important starting point. Um,
Hmm.
so I would recommend anyone dealing with marketing to really understand this fundamental really well.
So if you started out today with all the knowledge you already have, Um, what would you focus on? Like, where do you see it developing? What field do you think is important to be in? No.
You mean from a marketing perspective? If I
Yeah.
wanted to, one thing I think of marketing is about life, really, because you need to understand people, you need to understand human beings, you need to understand their needs, why they're doing what they're doing. And marketing also equals business. Uh, if you want to be a great marketeer, you need to be a great business person. And there is a certain richness to marketing, which makes it challenging in some ways, but also very inspirational. So I would try to enhance my learnings through adding on different skills. What I mean by that is, like I mentioned at the beginning, that I started in the market research department helped me throughout my career. Even today, after a couple of decades, I cherish those first years because it gave me a perspective. And yes, things changed dramatically in the market research area. Since then, different methodologies, more advanced and everything. But I know now, I still do know as a marketeer, how to think about research if I need research, how to brief an agency to get the best out of them, how to learn how to read a research paper so that I can get most of it. What are the limitations of research? I know this because I worked in that area. So I would recommend anyone who is interested in marketing to really enrich their experience through delving into different areas of business according to their interest. You know, if you, for instance, I still regret that I haven't taken some time and worked in the sales area or in the finance area because they enrich your way of looking at things, even when you're just doing marketing. So that's one thing, from a business side. And the other one is because marketing is about life and understanding your people, I would encourage everyone to cultivate their interests, whatever they may be. There's this young writer artist who has written this book called Steal Like an Artist. Austin Kleon is his name. He wrote this book several years ago, actually. I love it. It's a simple book, but reads very simple, but has profound ideas. And there he says, if you want to be creative, don't neglect any part of you. Just cultivate your interests because those interests will grow you as a person. And I would encourage all marketeers to do exactly that. If you have an interest in an area outside of your business endeavors, go cultivate it because it will add so much value to you as a person in understanding the world, in understanding other people. So that would be my kind of what I would advocate, really.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice, like to like go for what you're good at or what you're passionate for. And so I would like to go back to your journey and from starting out until you ended up as a global director for branding and innovation. Can you tell me a little bit more about this journey?
Some of the things that's going to happen to you, you plan, others just happen. So I love this word serendipity. Serendipity is just those happy encounters, right? So I started at Unilever and then I decided I want to try the creative side of marketing. So I moved to an advertising agency and there I learned my lesson. I learned that advertising doing advertising or working in an advertising agency is not for me. I kind of love marketing. So I decided to go back to marketing and I ended up at the Coca-Cola Company. And I find Coca-Cola to be sort of the highlight of my corporate career. Really enjoyed working there. And when I joined Coke, I learned that there's this position which exists in Atlanta called Global Brand Director. I was so intrigued by it, being at the headquarters of this amazing company and of this amazing brand and being able to work internationally, globally. And I remember telling myself, I love to do that one day, you know? And then several years after after working as head of marketing for Caucasus and Central Asian republics, I became an expat and moved initially to Hungary and then to Vienna. And then an opportunity came in front of me, which offered this position in Atlanta. And of course, I grabbed it. And so I ended up there, stayed 8 years actually on the global marketing team, doing different roles like global brand director, global innovation director. And there we focused more on the strategy side of marketing. That's why I'm so adamant about the strategy aspect of marketing. Uh, I always told it's critical, but working in Atlanta at the headquarters, at the global level, you recognize and realize even more that you need to be very cognizant, deliberate, laser focused in terms of why you're doing what you're doing. And you have to support your thinking with data. You have to take your steps according to a calculated, measured, plan and objectives. So it kind of honed my skills in that way. And I'm grateful for this experience, really. I cherished and enjoyed every minute of it, I have to say.
I think many would say that Coca-Cola is probably one of the greatest brands in the world. Like the brand awareness is at another level. You can probably go anywhere in the world and people would know what Coca-Cola is. And so how's that like the pressure around work having this uh, top position in a huge company, probably a lot at stake. How is that? Can you describe that for someone who hasn't been there?
It's true. I mean, it's true. There's a lot of pressure. You kind of need to like that, I guess,
Hmm.
I believe a lot of us who work there, we seem to have enjoyed that pressure somehow. After a while, it can get very tiring. There's a fine line, there's a sweet spot of how much pressure one can take. A little bit stress is always good. It pushes you to do things that you would normally wouldn't dare to do, right? So you need a little bit stress in your life. But if there's a threshold, over the threshold could be sometimes too much. And then we talk about the politics in the corporate world and all of that. But yeah, the pressure of doing good, we worked hard, I have to say. I mean, we worked hard. You work hard. And you need to make sure that as you're working hard, you're also developing still your skills. If you enjoy that kind of life, it can be great fun, I have to say. Again, there's this sweet spot, how much you can take in terms of stress.
Hmm.
Um, but I enjoyed it most of the time.
Yeah. I would like to also talk about like innovation because you also work a lot with innovation and often like when companies grow big, it's hard to like change ways of being and there's a lot of bureaucracy maybe and so how do you navigate like in a working on innovation in a company that's at this size?
I think that's the biggest challenge, because there's a dichotomy in there. If you're super successful as a company, innovation doesn't come that easily. Why? Because you have a lot of things at stake. You're much more careful, you're very risk averse, and that's a dilemma we face. And it can be really challenging because innovation, and I don't think a lot of people realize that, but innovation is very different than the day-to-day operations. The rules of the games are very different. How you should approach it, the total mentality is completely different. With day-to-day operations, you're more or less, you expect, of course, there are surprises, of course, there are challenges, of course, there are difficult moments and all of that. But you have honed your skills and you have mapped out your roadmap 1,000 times in a company like Coke. So you more or less know what to expect. But when you're doing innovation, it doesn't really matter that you have a perfect process or you've done all the research that needs to be done, you have great strategy in place. Still, innovation is creating something totally new from scratch, and there are a lot of unknowns involved in that. So,
Mm,
by definition, the risk you're taking is very different, and what you should manage is very different, and the mentality should be very different. You should open to experimentation much more. Innovation means that you should throw out there 100 ideas and maybe three of them will stick. I mean, of course, I'm exaggerating, but honestly, it is like that. You have to experiment, experiment, experiment. I mean, there are all those great case studies like Edison and how much he failed to gain, what he gained in the end. So that's the challenge with very successful companies because they have so much at stake. They don't like to experiment because they hate the word failure. I
mm,
actually hate the word failure because I think it is used in the wrong context. We should never use that word failure. We should use rather a learning opportunity or, experimentation, but never failure. Because when you're doing innovation, you should expect that sometimes you're not going to achieve what you are set out to achieve. You have to pivot, you have to revise, you have to rethink. So that's why entrepreneurs are usually much more daring. In the area of innovation, and they
mm,
can create brands that sometimes very successful companies cannot.
mhm.
There's a dilemma in that.
Yeah, and you think innovation is also connected to culture and like you've been working globally and can see there's more huge tech companies growing in the US versus the Europe. Have you seen any differences between countries or continents working with innovation?
This is such a great question. It is such a great question because absolutely, I think I'm very keen on talking about innovation culture because culture is half of it, really. Whether it's in a company, the company culture, or whether it's in a country, the country's culture, um, it's critical. I mean, I lived in US almost 15 years, 9 years in Atlanta, and then 6 years I commuted back and forth between New York and Istanbul. So I came to understand the US culture. It's very interesting. I think it's one of those cultures most open to trying new things. And probably it's because they are a relatively new country, right? They have built everything up in the last 200 years. And in US, it's all about, you accomplish something, the next day they think about improving it,
Hmm.
improving it and improving it. Whereas in Europe, in more established cultures, the notion is, well, we've been doing this for so long, quite successfully. Why change now? So you encounter that kind of resistance much more in Europe or in the older cultures than in US. To be able to do innovation, you need to not accept the status quo. You need to be always thinking like, what can I do next? What
Hmm.
can I improve? And it should be in the DNA, in the culture of the company or the country or the city you're in. So I think that's a very important question that you're asking there. Because if the culture doesn't cultivate innovation and risk taking, then you get a lot of challenges, even from your friends, even from your family. That could be pretty devastating. It could actually stop you from innovating, from taking risks. If someone asks you, why bother? It takes your energy away.
Hmm.
Uh,
True. And there's so much connected to like if you don't innovate, you're not gonna keep up with how things are developing, and you're not gonna attract investors and all of this to grow your company. And I think even to countries and like continents. If you compare Europe and the US, it's a huge difference we've seen the last 10, 20 years.
Right. Right. I think I learned a lot, I have to say, from living in US, in terms of how to think. Um, it took me a while to fully understand and internalize some of the learnings. It took me 2 years minimum. But once I understood it, pursuing the innovation route became even more interesting for me. Um, it's a different mindset.
Yeah. So what strategies do you think companies can use to foster creativity and innovation within their organization?
Yeah, so innovation in the corporate world, especially the large companies, the very successful ones, the success itself can be the barrier sometimes, right? And because those very successful companies with couple of $1 billion worth of brands have certain criteria to judge what success is. Usually, speed is important. So you have a new idea, you put it in the market, you have only X period of time, 6 months, a year to show the result, right? And when it doesn't happen, it's very easy to label the new brand as unsuccessful. And there's a huge issue with that. If you look to very successful brands, take Red Bull for instance. Red Bull is now a very established brand, but once upon a time, when I was working at Coke, it was still a relatively new brand. And my understanding of the Red Bull story is that Mateschitz, the owner, who saw this idea in Thailand in one of his trips, he came home and, you know, developed the idea, launched the brand. And if I'm not mistaken, it took him something like 10 years to establish Red Bull as this huge global successful brand that we know now. 10 years, you know. Which corporation, tell me, which successful corporation has that kind of patience? None of them.
Hmm.
Usually they expect the success to come very fast. And there is a dichotomy in there because if you are launching a new idea, sometimes it takes time to establish that idea in the marketplace. You have to learn, you have to pivot, you have to revise, you have to redo things, you have to nurture that idea. So, that in itself is a huge barrier for corporations to do breakthrough innovation, lack of patience. And the second notion is the way employees, leaders are assessed in the corporate world, I believe is a barrier in itself. Why? I mean, we all have the personal development plans, right? So you sit down with your boss, you write your objectives for the next year, and then by the end of the year, you get assessed whether you have reached your objectives or not, and you get your bonus. Now,
Hmm.
with innovation, the risk is so high that there is a chance if you want to pursue breakthrough innovation that you might not achieve all your objectives. There is that risk, no matter how well planned you are. So, what happens in the corporate world? A lot of incremental innovation is happening, a lot. But true breakthrough innovation is harder to come by because with breakthrough innovation, you have your personal trajectory, your personal career at stake. So, not many leaders, not many employees take this risk consciously or subconsciously. So that's what I mean by culture of innovation. Corporations, if they want to improve their innovation practices, need to give a bigger breathing room to their employees. They need to judge them, evaluate their performance very differently than the way they judge day-to-day operational performance.
Hmm.
The rules of the game are very different. The culture of innovation is very different than culture of growing an established brand. I can go on and on about that subject because I believe it's one of the biggest barriers for doing innovation in the corporate world, really.
It's very interesting. Do you think we've seen a change in what drives innovation? For example, let's take the car industry with sustainability, and you want to see like um, the buyers, the customers wants sustainable cars, electric, and then all the companies that created fossil fuel cars have to innovate. Like, have there been a change in who drives the innovation, where it starts from?
It's a great question. I think if you look at the history, I think some amazing innovation was born out of necessity, out of pressure. Actually, when you don't get pressurized, usually we are all human, right? I mean, it's the way we as humans are, corporations are similar. If you don't get the pressure, you're kind of happy with where you are. So, sustainability, of course, is a huge pressure on the companies, and they need to start thinking differently. Think definitely, probably, I don't know car industry that well, but I can only assume that they are being under huge pressure to change, obviously. And some of the successes, like what Elon Musk did, etc., is a great example. But you know, we are in this century which is offering us a lot of opportunities, but at equal measure a lot of challenges. So you need to open your scope and perspective that much more compared to when I started out as a
Mhm.
marketeer, really.
Yeah, because I think there's been like with technology and reviews, and the customers can like go on internet or on social media and like group up together if you're not a sustainable company or you're not treating your employees correctly. And
Yeah.
I think there's been like a change of power there where the consumers have more power now than before, maybe.
Totally, I think, totally. And we see that in everything, right? I don't know
Yeah.
whether it still exists, but I believe there were a couple of websites in England, right? And then they were sort of posting there, this, don't buy this brand because they've been doing this, this, this. Don't buy that product because I don't know whether it still exists, but you know,
Hmm.
and some of them may be truthful, other comments might be, I don't know, but it kind of it's everything is much more transparent right now,
Hmm.
and it's scary for the brands, but also it's invigorating in that way. If you truly understand the dynamics, and if you're open to, if you're transparent yourself, if you want to do good, even if you make a mistake, people will accept that mistake if you are transparent enough. I mean, we have
Hmm.
seen examples about that, right? I mean, we all make mistakes, right? I think it's a complete mistake to assume that you won't make mistakes. At a
Hmm.
personal level, we make mistakes. Brands make mistakes. Perfectionism is one of the worst things. I love actually Brené Brown books. I love Brené Brown and what she is advocating. She is this professor, researcher. She's researching big time on what shame means, what failure means, how fear is connected with that. If you read her books, perfectionism is one of the worst things out there. It's a wrong concept to begin with.
Hmm.
So if as companies, brands, or people, we accept that uh, we can make mistakes, we're open to criticism, then you actually give yourself a big push to do better, better, and better, in the right fashion, in the right way. It's the shift of the mindset, because someone like me who started out prior to the internet era, where everything was closed circuit, where everything was confidential, where you didn't talk about things openly to the public. It's a big shift in mindset, and you have to adjust to that mindset somehow. It took me, for instance, at an individual level for a while to accept a podcast. Like, you invited me and I was very happy to accept it. But if you invited me 5 years ago, I would have been very scared, because I
Mhm.
would have thought, like, oh my God, I can make a mistake, right? How would I look like? And brands are not very different. You have to be open with all your mistakes, all your issues, and your challenges, and then people would welcome you even more.
Mhm.
Um, and I think innovation and um, doing something novel, doing something better, also is born out of being open to all kinds of challenges and the issues. It's part of the process.
Yeah, and uh, from what I've seen, I think I've seen you've been working a lot with sustainability lately. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, right? I mean, if you're a
Yeah.
marketer today, you have to understand the concept of sustainability. I'm not a, sustainability consultant, but
No.
I make it my work, my objective to educate myself about sustainability as much as I can.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, how do you think it aligns with branding and innovation? It's two different fields though, but how do you see like corporations use sustainability in their overall strategy and branding? It's a big question, but
No, but I can tell you this much. Someone once asked me, this brand person, she said, I want to do something about sustainability, but it's not written in my strategy document. And I was like, it doesn't have to be written in your strategy document because sustainability should be in everything and everywhere. It's one of those things that it's not an add-on. Whatever we do, we have to also, look at whatever we do from the perspective of sustainability in today's world. No doubt about it. I think the biggest challenge comes from the fact that some of the challenges about sustainability are too difficult to solve, or,
Mhm.
it's going to take time to solve them. So, as a typical human being, sometimes the leaders avoid looking at the problem and they pretend as if it doesn't exist because they don't have a solution yet. And one of the things that I learned in the strategy work, what I would recommend is, and not all corporations are good at it, is to accept the fact that you have this challenge, you have this problem, and you don't have a solution for it yet. Because we're so in the corporate world, everything is there's a lot, like you said in the beginning, there are a lot of pressure to do to achieve things. So when you have a problem, you have to find a solution for it. That's the mindset. But sometimes the solution doesn't come that easily. So instead of ignoring it, you just say to yourself, I have this problem, I have this challenge, I put it out there, I'm going to look at it every day to the problem to find a solution to it. But I accept the fact that I don't have a solution to it today. And that's very important because some of the sustainability issues are not, as I said, they're not to be solved easily from today to tomorrow. But what are we going to do about it? Are we going to ignore them, or are we going to just um, think about them with the objective to solve them eventually? So I don't think sustainability is. There are, departments who are working on sustainability and everything, but we all, whoever is doing business, has to think what his or her job means from the perspective of sustainability, what it
Mhm.
means. That's what I strongly advocate, really.
Yeah, I see that we're running out of time. I have a couple more questions for you to just to
Sure.
finish up, and I'm wondering throughout your career, maybe it changed, but did you have any role models, people you looked up to?
Uh, you know, one of my bosses at Coke, Marc Mathieu. I worked for him for 4 years. He was a great role model. He was this amazing marketeer, also very creative, not a typical business person in that way. And I learned a lot from him. Also learned that how to, be myself and contribute. And I think that's very important, to be able to feel like you can be yourself, be your best self, which is different than everybody else,
Hmm.
because everyone is different than everybody else. And how can we individually, at an individual level, with our diverse selves, contribute, collaborate with everyone else to create a bigger synergy? I think that I learned that from him. And
Hmm.
then, everyone that I remember, whether it's a professor of mine at the college or other senior leaders, people inspired me, also trusted people who trusted me. So
Hmm.
when someone trusts you, I think that's a very important feeling to have.
Hmm.
Then they enable you to achieve things that even you didn't know you can achieve. People, um, senior leaders, or whether it's a professor, whoever, who trusted me actually inspired me the most. Um, so I tried to give them back through delivering the
Yeah.
trust they inflicted in me.
I would consider you maybe one of the global experts on branding. So, which company do you think, what is the greatest brand in the world? Who is doing the most right?
Hmm. That's such an interesting question. I never ever thought it that way.
What do you think is the greatest brand in the world
Today,
today? Yeah.
you know, when you were even formulating this question, just one brand dropped in my mind. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now because I have to say, Apple, really. It's a
Yeah.
classic traditional answer, unfortunately, but um, they've been doing really good, I think.
Yeah.
So the second one that sort of I immediately thought, but I'm kind of hesitating because the second one I thought was Google, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like it became a verb, right? Google it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm working with Apple, my computer, my iPhone, everything, and I'm Googling every minute. So, inevitably, uh, they are super useful. And that's the thing about brands, really. One last thing about marketing, perhaps. I think people misunderstand marketing and brand building as coming up with a great communication strategy, great tagline, and doing fancy advertising and saying fancy things, and you can then create your brand. Actually, I keep on telling everyone, if you want to create a brand, you need to first understand humans and their needs really in depth. And then, whatever you are promoting, whatever your product is, you need to make sure that your product delivers that need at its best. And only then we can talk about becoming a brand. So marketing cannot create anything out of thin air. Great marketing also means that you have a great marketing and you're delivering on what is expected from you. So when I say Apple and when I say Google, to the most part, to me personally, they are delivering every day what I expect from them. And I think that's a very important part of what marketing truly is. That
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you need to deliver what you are promising that you will be delivering.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of your promise, in terms of satisfying the need of people, um, I should say.
Hmm.
Sorry, I wasn't very creative, but
Yeah.
Apple and Google.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's the answers might be pretty obvious. Like a brand
Yeah,
should be well known, I guess. So I have one last question and then I'll let you go.
No, it's my pleasure. It's very enjoyable.
Is there something you dreamed of doing for a long time that you like a goal you have?
I'm going to give you a very different, unexpected answer because remember I talked about, pursuing your, you should you should go for every part. I mean, whatever is in your heart, pursue it because even if it's not within the realm of your business framework, it will help you grow. So when I was getting disillusioned from the corporate world at one point in my life, when I was in Atlanta and I was thinking maybe I should move on and do my own thing, I did one thing. And it's the following. I have always been very passionate about design and particularly interior design. And even before the internet era, I was thinking one day, when the internet really flourishes, great universities will put on programs online and I will do something. I will educate myself about design, about interior design. So at that moment, around 2008, when I started considering maybe I should move on from the corporate world, I kind of remembered this thought and I said, let me look at what's out there in terms of interior design education. Okay. So I
Yeah.
researched and I came across this Master of Arts program from one of the most reputable art colleges in US, Savannah College of Art and Design. And it was completely online. Okay. So I rang them up and I said, look, I'm a business person. Would I be allowed to enter this program? And they said, write as a research paper, minimum 20 pages long. And if you like it, you might be accepted. Yes, most of the students are already interior designers, but this program is theoretical and it's open to everyone. I got accepted and I finished the program in 2 years with 4.0. I'm very proud about that. And it was the most beautiful 2 years of my life. I worked in the evenings, I worked over the weekends to accomplish this MA. And now I have a master's in interior design. And since then, it's funny because then I set up my own consulting business and I again, concentrated on marketing, etc. But I want to rekindle my passion for design and I want to start writing about design because there's something unfulfilled in that for me. And it's interesting because although it seems like it's a completely different field, like I said in the beginning, everything is about humans. So me writing and thinking about interior design or design is actually cultivating my understanding of people, my understanding of marketing, my understanding of brand building at the same time. So
Mhm.
that's what I would recommend everyone, pursue your dreams no matter what it is. They will connect at the end of the day with each other.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I heard this. I don't remember the name of the person, but they said, "How do you know you have a brand?" And the example was picture Apple opening a hotel. Like you have kind of this image in your head of what it would look like. The same thing with Nike or brands like that, and that's where interior design can come in. Like it's connected with the design and like how you how you remember it.
Perceive the world. Yeah. Perceive
Yes,
the world
yes.
around you. So, you know, that's one thing that I still need to accomplish.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking your time. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me. I mean, it was such an enjoyable discussion. So, interview. Thank you so much for hosting me. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.